What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Sports Ramblings. We had a great opening week of college football. I am your fearless leader, Mikey. That's Tim. That's Tim. The camera.
What's
The
up,
camera's
guys?
backwards. So our technological prowess has improved. Tim can actually see me. You can kind of see like a little preview window on Tim, like you see right here. So you can see my mouse going on to his. We're still working out some technology. You will notice down below, like below the social medias, we have a little text scroller with the top 25. Current AP poll of the top 25, finally featuring your Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Go Irish.
And at number one, the least surprising thing in the history of humanity. And so we had week one of college football. Tim was at Notre Dame, Temple. I was at LSU BYU. We watched plenty of other games, followed a bunch of other games. There's a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right in. Tim, how was Notre Dame Temple? Before you answer that, how is Crossroads in the context of a football game?
I was actually very, very impressed by what I saw with all the new stadium renovations on Saturday. First of all, obviously the biggest thing was the jumbotron / video board, whatever you want to call it. That thing, it was like love at first sight for me. It was odd, right off the bat, you were able to see the team finishing their game day prayer in the locker room and then coming out of the tunnel.
So they had live video feed from the locker room?
Yeah, a live video feed, seeing them coming out, walking down the stairs, hitting the Play Like a Champion Today sign. Stuff that we had never been able to see before in Notre Dame Stadium. And it just kind of lit a spark plug in the stadium. Once you saw on the screen the team starting to come out, everyone just got super energized, and it just got it just went up a notch in terms of the energy. So it was just that was just so cool right off the bat. And then I loved, obviously being actually able to see a replay all the time. I know it was stuff something I'd never seen before at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
But finally we're able to see that, and the all the flashbacks and stuff that they had, just really sent chills up your spine if you're a diehard Notre Dame fan. Mm-hmm. And they also have on Crossroad, on the buildings themselves, so that run the length of the field, they have ribbon boards now. So those little tiny
mm-hmm. So along the railings of the stadium club and suites and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And so they have the score up there and the timeouts, the time, all that sort of stuff. And they also will put up there who made the last play. So it'll say B. Wimbush Notre Dame 7-yard run or something like that. Which is really cool. Also helps you to get to know some of the players' names, mm-hmm. if you're not that familiar with them. So I was super impressed by what I saw, and all the other renovations too. They had all new signs in the concourses, new seats. They got rid of all the old wooden benches, replaced them with galvanized steel, mm-hmm. which was really cool. And the concession stands were all renovated. Same with the bathrooms, and they even had TVs in the concourses so that you could see the action of the game while you were waiting in line for the bathroom or at the concession stand or whatever. So it was just really cool to see that it looks like Notre Dame Stadium has finally come into the year 2017. So.
Yep, better late than never.
Really
so a couple questions. Did they play any clips from Rudy or the Rudy soundtrack?
They did not. Surprisingly not. There were no clips from Rudy during the game. I was shocked.
That is utterly surprising. bit disappointing. I mean, they did show Rudy on the jumbotron like a week
They
or two
did.
ago.
So they already got their fill with that.
So yeah. So the hype videos were like, I'm sure they had hype videos. Were those like good? I'm sure
Super good.
I'm sure some Lou Holtz-isms and Canutes in black and white, or I mean,
there was just a lot of black and white.
back when we won championships.
I'd like to see more color because that means that we're winning recently and not like 80 years ago. You know.
I like how we both kind of made the same joke like at the same time.
I mean, it's not hard, Mikey.
You know what? It's better to be a has-been than a never was.
I guess so. That is true.
So, looking at who's a never was, that A&M's a never was, and we'll talk about them in detail later. So
yeah, they had an interesting game on Sunday night. For those of you who weren't aware,
interesting is putting it lightly. So Crossroads, the new stadium renovations look great. Sounds good. I'm hoping to see for myself at some point this year. Now, let's get on to the game itself. Obviously, Notre Dame beat Temple of score 49-16, I believe. Pretty lopsided the entire game. There was a period where Temple scored like all their points in the second quarter or something like that. And then the Irish actually did something called halftime adjustments, which have been unheard of previously in the Brian Kelly era.
Yeah, it's like finding a unicorn. That's how rare it is around here.
Yeah. So I only was able to watch a little bit of the game on TV in my hotel room in New Orleans before going out and tailgating and all that. And I can say the broadcast on NBC, which, I mean, the progress it's made since when we were in high school back in 2012 season is great, and Mike Tirico is still one of the best sports announcers in history. Even makes up for the dislikes some people have for Doug Flutie. So I was only able to watch a little bit of the game, but it looked great. The stadium looked great. The helmets are still shiny. So let's get your rundown of stuff you liked from the game, stuff you saw that was good, stuff you saw that wasn't so good. Just anything that comes to mind from your experience at Notre Dame Stadium.
Well, first of all, like, our offense really seemed to be clicking on all cylinders, which I think many people expected coming into the season. I mean, we have so many weapons on the offensive side of the ball with
Wimbush.
Yeah, with Wimbush starting, Equanimeous still being one of our top receivers, Josh Adams back for another year. I mean, that was maybe the best I've ever seen Josh Adams look. Now, I know it's Temple, but he still had a very impressive debut. We have Alize Mack back from suspension last season, so that's definitely a big help. But yeah, so the offense just really seemed to be clicking on all cylinders, which was great to see. But for me, I think a big positive to take out of this game was that our defense looked a lot more formidable than it did last season. And I think the biggest moment in the game for them was, I think it was like mid or late second quarter, maybe even in the third, somewhere in that range. Brandon Wimbush throws an interception right at around midfield, and Temple returns it to about like the 20-25 yard line. So they're in incredibly good field position, looking to score a touchdown and make things a little tighter. But our defense holds them just stuffs them cold for 3 straight downs. Forces, I think it was like 2 incompletions and a run stop, I believe. And then they forced Temple to miss a field goal on the ensuing try. So after all that, Temple walked away with no points off of that drive, and that was like something that we haven't seen from a Notre Dame defense in a long time. Like, I feel like last year, in a situation like that, it would have been a touchdown in like 2 plays for the opposing team, if that. I mean, so that was the big moment of the game for me, where I really thought that we might have we might have somewhat of like a formidable defense this year. But again, like I said, it is Temple. I mean, as solid of a team as they are, they're not a Power 5 team. They're certainly not a Georgia, which is who we're facing this weekend. And so that's going to be, for me, that's going to be the real test to see how good Notre Dame really is this year, is this Georgia game this weekend. I know Jacob Eason, their starting quarterback, injured himself last week and won't play this week. But I understand that this freshman who's starting, Jake Fromm, was like a 4 or 5-star recruit, enrolled early last spring. So he's already kind of familiar with the playbook, and they've still got so many other weapons there on offense, notably Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel in the run game, that's going to be a very formidable challenge for our defense. So that's going to be the real test for me as to see how good our defense really is this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Of course, like I said, I didn't get to watch the entire game or that many highlights. I mean, the game was glossed over, which I think whenever Notre Dame plays a cupcake, it's really good for the game to not get attention, because that means we absolutely, we killed them. And Temple, yeah, they're probably one of the better power group of 5 teams. They came off, I think, back-to-back 10-win seasons, but they don't have their coach anymore. They
won their conference last year, I believe.
So they're a little bit more formidable than a FCS or Sun Belt team, but not by much. So so Temple definitely, the game went well for Notre Dame. Big challenge up ahead for Georgia. We will cover that later. So I want to talk a little bit about the LSU BYU game, which is the game I was fortunate enough to attend in person. This video brought to you by Coca-Cola. We wish. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
And so, as you know the story, Hurricane Harvey displaced the LSU BYU game to New Orleans. A little bit of an off-the-field thing. So, for the average BYU fan who's a vast majority of them Mormons, New Orleans isn't exactly the ideal destination for them regardless, but taking place at the same time in New Orleans is the Decadence Festival, which is a large LGBTQ, whatever other letters are supposed to be there, event. It's the 4th largest event in New Orleans behind Jazz Fest, Mardi Gras, and one other. And so it's a large gay people festival, which probably was icing on the proverbial cake that made BYU fans uncomfortable to come to the Big Yeezy. So I hope they had fun. However, the game did not exactly give BYU reasons to have fun. LSU absolutely dominated. BYU had more points than rushing yards, which is considerable considering they didn't score ever. And I think they had 95 total yards of offense, and in addition, they did not cross midfield. Now let's not talk about the last time a team failed to cross midfield or score in the Superdome as a collegiate team, because that is not something we want to focus on. Tim is smirking because he knows exactly which game I'm talking about, or is Tim's video feed frozen? Tim?
Yeah. Mikey, you still there?
Dude, your video are you
Mikey?
there? Your video, I mean,
Mikey.
Oh God. Hello? Oh,
dude,
no.
my connection is super whacked right now.
I mean, Tim is now frozen. All right, we're going to take a break and sort this out. We'll be back.
Oh, my Lord.
All right, we are back. Tim's video feed apparently is cutting out and freezing. Tim, are you actually there? Or is that just a picture of you again?
No, I'm here. I can see you. I can hear you. It's a little the connection's a little shoddy, but I think I'm back.
Okay, yeah, the connection is definitely shoddy. We have video catching up, but we're just gonna roll with it because this is extremely unprofessional. I was talking about BYU fans and the Decadence Festival and how they didn't put together any semblance of an offense, failing to cross midfield, which another team failed to cross midfield in a game in the Superdome in January of 2002 2012. I don't want to name any names, but that was not a
Rip.
fun game. So LSU did to BYU what LSU had done to it. However, the Advocare Texas kickoff in Louisiana is not nearly as high stakes as a BCS championship game or a national championship game. So LSU defense as dominant as ever, if not more dominant. Dave Aranda continues to be my please don't leave us candidate for any team I like at all, like over Drew Brees and the Saints, or I mean, Brian Kelly can go wherever the fuck he wants at this point. But your video is delayed from your audio. This is going to be funny. It might catch up. So it doesn't stop. Oh my God, we're never going to get this episode done. So LSU's defense was great. LSU's offense, very vanilla. Not a whole lot that you would nothing too flashy. A little bit of stuff you haven't seen before. A little bit of Matt Canada's work going to work there. But whenever you hold a team behind the 50-yard line, scoring points in bunches is not a necessity. And I think I saw in interviews after the game with, I think it might have been the Advocate or some other local media, Ed Ogeron and Matt Canada said they used at most 10% of LSU's playbook. And so that is completely understandable. You don't want to show Nick Saban your best play working against BYU. So a little bit of foresight there from the Tiger offensive staff. And you know what? It was good. The Superdome had, I think the attendance said like a little over 53,000 people, which is, I'm glad it was over 50,000. That's about the number of people were looking. A good, healthy number of BYU fans, about as many as you would expect anyway. And just no complaints. The Superdome was rocking. Everyone was having fun. LSU's band was mic'd up. BYU doesn't have a band, or they didn't bring it. I'm not quite sure. And we might have lost Tim, but we're just going to roll with it. No, Tim moves every now and then. So
no, I'm still here.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. So LSU put together a very dominant performance, impressing a lot of people, except the AP voters who only moved them up one spot. Notre Dame also breaking into the top 25 this week, as we mentioned earlier. So we've covered the two games that we went to. Now we're going to move on to covering some other games of interest. Just a quick little local shout out to UL Lafayette Raging Cajuns. They won a shootout with Southeastern. First time they played in a while. If I'm not mistaken, the game, the final plays of the game were Southeastern tied or scored a touchdown, could have kicked an extra point to tie, I think. They decided to go for two. UL ran the 2-point conversion back for a touchdown. Southeastern had an attempted onside kick and failed. So congratulations to the Raging Cajuns having a winning record. That might not last very long. Other games of note. Alabama, Florida State. I don't know about you, Tim. I wasn't able to watch it because it did coincide a lot with the LSU BYU game. But from what I saw, Florida State special teams were absolutely atrocious. The main story coming out of that game was Francois, the Florida State quarterback, getting injured, which has been declared a season-ending injury. Alabama did what Alabama does best and just make every mistake you make into a touchdown. So, Tim, any takeaways from the Alabama-Florida State game? Anything that you thought caught your eye other than Alabama's still good and Florida State, it had potential, but now that their quarterback's out, might be in big trouble?
I think you really hit on that, on those points there, that Alabama, obviously, they're pretty much what we thought. You know, this one of the most dominant teams we've seen in college football. No surprise there. Florida State, I agree. I think with the Francois injury, that's a huge blow to their season hopes, especially in a very tough and challenging ACC this year. You got to think that like Clemson and Louisville and Miami have got to be licking their chops, knowing that Florida State's really not going to be that much of a factor in the conference anymore. I mean, they could be, but they're definitely not going to be the same team that they would have been with Francois in there. So that's a huge loss. And like you said, Mikey, the special teams for Florida State kind of let them down in this game. I think they had a couple of missed field goals, and the game was close at halftime. It was like a 10-7 Alabama lead at the half, and then just a nightmarish second half for Florida State, which was kind of capped off by a fumble on a kickoff after an Alabama touchdown, I believe, gave Alabama another score pretty much right away. So, yeah, it was kind of a nightmarish second half for Florida State. And then obviously the injury to their quarterback. I mean, it's definitely not the way that the Noles wanted to start their season. But, so, yeah, other than that, I think those are pretty much the main takeaways. You know, just Alabama's really good again.
Shocker.
And Florida's shocker. And I think Florida State might be in some big trouble here heading into the meat of the season.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't have said it better myself. Obviously, Clemson is probably now the favorites to win that division of the ACC. And with Florida State, I think they play Miami in a few weeks here is going to be one of their big tests for their backup quarterback. So obviously, feel bad. Prayers and thoughts go out for DeAndre Francois. Hope he recovers. But that injury definitely has spelled is not boding well for Florida State's playoff chances. I think we can almost count them out with that news. We'll see. We've been surprised by backups in the past. Let's see, what else? Other games, Michigan, Florida. Florida failed to score an offensive touchdown. I think that's the story of the game, other than two back-to-back pick sixes, which is pretty lucky to get a pick six, but the fact you ran two of them back is impressive. That's the only thing that really kept this game close. Michigan doesn't look amazing, but Florida looks like absolute garbage. Tim, what do you think about that game? I mean, that was the same time as the Notre Dame Temple game, so I can understand if you didn't watch it live, but anything you saw from highlights or just want to echo what you saw on some of the sports shows or any other media you have consumed.
I mean, pretty much what you said. I mean, like Florida not scoring an offensive touchdown. I mean, this is like the same old narrative for the Florida Gators. I mean, defense pretty solid, but I mean they gave up 33 points in this game, so that's not great by any means. But so you've got that going against them. Their defense looks like they're not what we thought they were, which has traditionally been Florida's strength. So that's a big concern because their offense once again can't score points. And I mean this is kind of been the narrative for Florida the last several years. I mean, unless like something just drastically changes here, I think Florida's in big trouble coming into the rest of this season. And I'm saying that even with them playing in the SEC East, which is definitely the weaker of the two divisions in that conference. So I mean, I really don't think that Florida is going to be able to win that division, especially when you've got Georgia, especially if Jacob Eason gets healthy, and maybe even Tennessee pulls a surprise. But I think with the showing that Florida put on in that game on Saturday, I think that Georgia's got to be the favorite in that division now, unless Florida somehow pulls a fast one and fixes that offense in a hurry, because it's just a disaster.
I definitely agree with you there. I think your SEC East favorites are probably going to be Georgia, maybe even South Carolina. Kind of transitioning, South Carolina did win the Belk College kickoff, or the Belk Bulls beginning of the season game there in North Carolina in the Panther Stadium. They beat NC State, so kind of
Yeah, that was a pretty good win for them.
yeah, good win for the fighting Will Muschamps there in South Carolina. So that was impressive. Not too much to say about that game. Louisville struggled against Purdue, but came back and won. Any other games from Saturday that caught your attention before we move on to the Sunday and Monday games? Because those are definitely worth spending more time on.
I think we pretty much covered all the bases with the Saturday games. We obviously covered Notre Dame, LSU a lot. We covered the big games.
Which actually, a game that actually happened between us recording and airing the last Sports Ramblings. Indiana hosting Ohio State. Ohio State struggled first quarter, but came back and won big there. So some red flags for Ohio State. JT Barrett did not look like the man who would break Drew Brees' Big Ten records as he did a few years ago. So some red flags for Ohio State. They're still number 2, still have yet to be tested. So I think that's the only thing I can say about that game. Anything you want to say about that game?
There's kind of another situation where, Indiana puts up a good fight for about about a half or 3 quarters, and then they just kind of run out of gas. I think that's just kind of been the story for the Hoosiers the last few years. They've been a sneaky good team that's given some teams a real run for their money, but it just seems like they don't have the stamina to finish off any of these big upsets. So obviously a lot of work still to be done down there in Bloomington, but Indiana's certainly never been a major football power, so not like too out of the ordinary for them. But I still think they're a program that's definitely seems to be on a slow rise, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe later this season they pull a big upset. They finally get over the hump and upset someone big, maybe a Michigan, maybe a Penn State or a Michigan State, and kind of shake up the Big Ten standings a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely agree with you there. I think you diagnosed the situation there in Bloomington perfectly. And yeah, they have been seeming to get better each year, but it's been very, very slow. So we'll see if what the Hoosiers can put together. Last thing I was just thinking while you were saying that, the last thing we want to cover before we get to some of the bigger games later in Labor Day weekend. The Fighting Bo Pellinis of Youngstown State did take Pittsburgh to overtime. So Pittsburgh clearly struggling now that Matt Canada has come to the land of gumbo and Mardi Gras. So
they've got Penn State this weekend. So good luck.
Yeah, I think Pitt is toast there. They're I'm trying to make a pun with Pitt, but I'm struggling because I'm on the fly. Let's move on.
Sports ramblings.
Lots of ramblings, some sports. So
that's a good motto, by the way.
We should definitely tweet that or something. So
next time we'll put that on the screen, all right?
Absolutely. Or in an intro or something. So on Sunday night, there were 2 games, and 2 teams did lose on Sunday. The biggest losers are fans who did not have 2 TVs, because for some reason, the only 2 games going on, maybe? Were there other games on Sunday?
No, those are the only 2 I was aware of.
So the only 2 games happened to have the exact same kickoff time. Fox and ESPN giving each other middle fingers, clearly there. And so we had 2 great games. Texas A&M visiting UCLA for a very interesting game down there in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and West Virginia and Virginia Tech renewing their rivalry that has been on a 12-ish year hiatus.
12 years. The last time they played was 2005.
In DC. Okay, so they resumed that rivalry in DC. Best game you'll see at FedEx Field all year. Sorry, Redskins fans, but it's true. And so let's talk about Virginia Tech, West Virginia first. I was extremely impressed by both teams. Both offenses and defenses seem to be really strong and powerful. This was two top 20 two teams ranked between 20 and 25, and they looked like they definitely deserved those rankings. They looked like they had each other pound for pound. A very even matchup there, and an amazing rivalry game. Ending up in the Black Diamond Trophy, though, staying with West Virginia. Tim, I know you tweet Virginia Tech. They both have Virginia. It's so confusing. Virginia Tech defeating West Virginia. You see, whenever I'm talking and thinking about what I'm going to say next, I usually say the wrong thing. So
it happens.
It does happen. This is why it's sports ramblings. This is why. Other than the fact they're going bankrupt and dragging Disney down with them, this is why ESPN won't hire us. Clearly, so.
No.
But,
too amateur.
I mean, it's the amateur that makes it good. So, Tim, I do remember you either tweeted or retweeted that the West Virginia Tech rivalry game is one that needed to happen and desire for it to continue. I 100% agree with you, but of course, let's let you deliver your case via your own self or whatever. Don't take my word for it. This backwards camera gets me. He said it. So
I tweeted that after the game that I think that game proved that this rivalry needs to be played every single year, because I mean, just watching that game live, I mean, the crowd there in DC was incredible. Like, just super passionate fans on both sides. You could tell that, like, this game meant a lot to both of them. And the product that we saw on the field, I mean, it was a back and forth affair the whole night. I mean, I don't think there was ever a point in the game where a team had more than a touchdown lead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a very close, very hotly contested game throughout. I mean, and of course, it came right down to the last play. Mm-hmm. I mean, what more could you really ask for in a college football game? So, I mean, I think this is a rivalry that I think has definitely been awoken, and I think that is great news for all college football fans, because this was one heck of a ball game that I thoroughly enjoyed watching. I know you enjoyed watching it, Mikey, and I think we might already have a candidate for like one of the games of the year in week one. I mean, it was that good, but we have another candidate, a game that happened to be going on the exact same time.
A game that was back and forth, but only one back and one forth. Texas A&M demonstrating that they can go through the roller coaster of an entire season within the microcosm of one game. The Aggies came out guns a-blazing, as Texans like to do. Took a 44-10 lead, but that would not be it. That would not be enough to put away the Bruins. Quarterback Josh Rosen put together a fantastic comeback, icing on the cake, a fake spike to a pass in the end zone.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
No, and like I said, a microcosm of Texas A&M season. In years past, it's been Texas A&M has had outstanding Septembers, shaky Octobers, and disastrous Novembers.
Mm-hmm.
A&M had a amazing first and second quarter, iffy around halftime, and a disastrous fourth quarter. A&M maybe with one of the biggest comebacks I've seen in a game. Kevin Sumlin's seat has gotten a lot hotter.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to have to put together one hell of a season to keep his job there down in College Station. But I mean, the thing with this game was I was primarily watching the Virginia Tech West Virginia game, and flipping back to the Texas A&M UCLA game, and then once A&M UCLA got a little boring, I went back to the game in DC, and I was checking Twitter and the ESPN app for scores and seeing the bottom line that UCLA was coming back. And whenever I saw that, and then I started switching back and forth again. And when I saw UCLA was on their final drive, I'm like, I have to watch this. I know exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to stop UCLA. And the fact that it was a fake spike touchdown was so good to see. Like, it was... I don't by any means hate A&M fans, but they're a fan base that has a lot of pride without much to back it up, which that's good. I'd rather them have a lot to be proud of and not be proud, or whatever whatever I'm trying to say there. But
ramblings.
Definitely ramblings going on. The Aggies just choked away a massive lead, rivaling the Falcons for the biggest collapse of 2017. So, Tim, what else do you have to say about this game? Like,
I mean, like when I saw it happening, it's like, I mean, like I said, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, like, it's just unbelievable how like incompetent that Texas A&M seems at times. I mean, like you were saying, it's like, they start off really well in their past seasons, and then by the time they get to like Halloween, they're in, disaster mode and the ship is capsizing. I mean, it's unbelievable how this team just seemingly like just cannot get out of their own way half the time. And and like you were saying, like Texas A&M fans, they are super passionate people when it comes to their football team. I mean, I've never been, but I've heard that Kyle Field in College Station is one of the like premier venues in college football. But I mean, it's just got to be like, if you're an A&M fan, it's just got to be like heart-wrenching to see your team just year after year after year just completely tanked by mid-season. And like you said, Mikey, this game was like a microcosm of that. I mean, you think things are going well, and then just all of a sudden the wheels fall off. And I mean, I really find it hard to believe that Kevin Sumlin is still the head coach at the end of the season. I personally think he gets fired before October ends.
Really?
That's my belief, because I mean, I haven't looked at their schedule too much, but obviously like late September, early October, that's when conference play starts. They're going to start playing some of these tough teams in the SEC. And, that's traditionally where they kind of fall down the tubes. Yep. So, I mean, maybe it begs the question, was moving to the SEC one of the worst decisions Texas A&M has ever made? I mean, that begs the question. Hiring Kevin Sumlin, was that one of the worst decisions they ever made? That's another question. I mean, there are just so many questions surrounding this program right now. I find it hard to believe that, that this team is able to really put something strong together the rest of the way.
Yeah, going off what you said about should, Texas A&M having, buyer's remorse about coming over to the Southeastern Conference, the only sport that I've seen that benefit at Texas A&M in is baseball. It's hurt them in basketball for sure. It's a big question mark in football. But, I mean, Bluebell Park is one of the premier ballparks for college baseball. Great tradition there. The Aggies have powerful teams year in and year out. But whenever it comes to the pigskin on the gridiron, Kevin Sumlin and the Aggies have not been able to get it done, putting together 8-4 seasons almost every year. And now, I mean, I think this might be fake news, but from what I know, A&M's next upcoming schedule is they host Nicholls State, they host UL Lafayette, two South Louisiana powerhouses that are definitely going to give them a run for their money. Then they have that game, the Southwest Classic against Arkansas in Jerry World, and then they have the Crimson Tide. So, they're going to be 3-1. Then they're going to be 3-2 most likely if they can beat Arkansas. We all know if you go to overtime with Arkansas, you're screwed. So they have.
Although A&M has had success, A&M actually has had success with Arkansas in the past. But again, they usually play Arkansas in the first half of the season, which is when things are going good. It's
pre-mid-season collapse, yes.
Uh-huh.
And so, just knowing A&M's schedule, I don't think they play anyone too shocking from the East. But Alabama is obviously unbeatable until proven otherwise. And A&M has not been able to beat LSU for, like, I think it's been over 20 years. They failed to beat them in the Cotton Bowl the year before joining the SEC, and they have yet to beat the Tigers, the better SEC Tigers, since joining the conference. And that game is in Death Valley this year, so A&M has, I think, almost no chance of beating LSU, no chance of beating Alabama. So their best case scenario is 9-3, and I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep Kevin Sumlin there in College Station as a head football coach, or whether or not Chip Kelly is starting to look at real estate options in College Station. So
yeah, that's the word on the street, I hear.
I mean, that's going to be what you're going to hear just about every school that's looking for a head coach. You're going to hear the name Chip Kelly at every single one of them. So yeah, not the best outlook for the Aggies. I mean, I'm not hoping LSU gives them a generous win. Like, no, I want them to lose that game too. But yeah, they're definitely struggling to. They joined the SEC hoping to disrupt the pecking order, and they've ended up, instead of rivaling LSU and Alabama for the West title, they're rivaling A&M or they're rivaling Auburn, Ole Miss, and Arkansas for the middle of the pack standings. So, I mean, A&M definitely has their work.
And Auburn's got a pretty good team this year. I mean, I don't know if A&M wins that game. I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure whether that's at Kyle Field or down there in Jordan Hare, but regardless, Auburn's gonna be a tough nut to crack for the Aggies. So
yeah,
definitely have their work cut out for them. This was not what you want. This is not the foot you wanted to get started. They started off on the right foot, but within 16 minutes, they ended up tripping over themselves and falling flat into the mud. So, condolences to Aggie fans. We hope your season isn't too unbearable. Enjoy the Belk Bowl or something like that, hopefully. So those were the two Sunday games. I think all we can say about the Sunday games, both fantastic in very different ways. Both meaning very different things. I think I thought the two best teams to come out of that weekend were the two Virginia Tech and West Virginia. Whereas I think UCLA has a lot of questions to answer despite mounting a miraculous comeback. We'll see how the Bruins do there in the Pac-12. A&M, obviously, we have beat that horse as dead as can be. So, hopefully we have games that rival those in intensity, and we had a very interesting game the next day on Labor Day, Chick-fil-A College Kickoff Part 2, featuring Tennessee Volunteers and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, making the long trip from somewhere else in Atlanta to the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I was not able to watch this game, although I was following it. Tim, I'm sure you watched. What do you have to say about the Volunteers taking the Yellow Jackets to overtime?
That was another super exciting
Before you start, why on earth does Tennessee have a trash can on the sidelines? Did you see that?
I don't know, dude. That's sometimes you just don't ask questions. That's kind of what I've learned,
I mean, I'm asking the question because that does not bode well for Tennessee. Like, is that their playbook, or are they just that self-aware, or
it's something with like their defense. Like whenever their defense gets a turnover, they take the football and they dunk it into the trash can. Yeah, not sure how that started, but
it's kind of cheesy. Yeah. So, what'd you think of the game? What'd you think of the teams and all that?
I personally thought that Tennessee was pretty lucky to get away with this win. Because Georgia Tech ran for like over 500 yards in this game.
They outgained Tennessee by a mile, I think. Like, it was not even close in terms of yardage.
I mean, I don't know if it's ever happened before in college football where a team gives up that many yards on offense and still manages to win the game. So, I mean, Tennessee looked it was kind of similar to the A&M UCLA game. Georgia Tech looked very in control for about 3/4 of that game. And then Tennessee just kind of flipped the switch in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, unlike the UCLA game, Georgia Tech didn't have a super big lead because it just felt like they were dominating the game because their time of possession was so much greater than Tennessee's. Running that triple option, it's just kind of, like a progressive march down the field. It's not like big play after big play. So that's why it felt like they were really dominating the game, but the scoreboard didn't reflect that. So, I mean, once Tennessee got like a quick score or two, I mean, the entire game had changed. So, still thought that Tennessee was pretty lucky to come out of that win. For the record, I did like Georgia Tech's decision to go for 2 there at the end of double overtime because, I mean, you think about it, they would have to go for 2 on their next possession anyway because in triple overtime, you have to go for 2 after a touchdown. So I like that decision for that reason and also because I think Georgia Tech kind of felt like that they might not be able to win this game if it went to a third overtime. I think they thought they didn't have enough gas left in the tank. And they were probably also thinking, you know what? We've run all over this volunteer team all night. Let's try to get, 2 more yards on them here. And so, I mean, I think if you're in that situation, I think you're willing to take that gamble. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. So, of course, Paul Johnson and his crew are going to get, bashed for it. But, I mean, if they had scored, I mean, it would have been praised as a genius move. So, I mean, it's one of those high-risk, high-reward things that unfortunately didn't work out for Georgia Tech. But I think, again, like I said, I think kind of a lucky win for Tennessee. But, I mean, we'll see how they do the rest of the way, especially once SEC play starts.
Yeah, definitely. From what I've heard, that going for 2 was definitely the right call because in triple overtime, they would have had to do it anyway, and neither defense seemed capable of getting a stop regardless. So I definitely agree with you that Paul Johnson and company definitely made the right decision there and just came up short. So definitely agree with that 2-point conversion call. The only takeaway, the biggest takeaway I had from this, from following the game on Twitter and just watching some highlights and all that, is LSU is in very good shape when it comes to their SEC schedule. Obviously, they're going to Tuscaloosa. I'm not even counting that. That doesn't count. LSU. I'm just hoping LSU makes a New Year's 6. I don't think they're going to be able to beat Alabama, and Alabama's not losing twice in the regular season. Once is questionable enough. So
because you could have a situation like last year in the Big Ten where, even if LSU does beat Alabama and they go to the SEC championship game,
might put Alabama.
They might still put Alabama in if that's their only loss. I mean, that's exactly what happened with Ohio State last year, which I think was stupid. But
and Ohio State failed to score a point in that playoff game. But
LOL.
That's neither here nor there. But LSU's 2 SEC East games are both on the road, and we've talked about both the teams. At Florida and at Tennessee. I was worried about going to Florida, and Tennessee could have put together a new team. Tennessee seemed so, from the reports I got and just from the yardage numbers, Tennessee's defense seemed so incompetent. And that LSU at Tennessee game is after they play Alabama. And the comment I made about the Tigers only using maybe 1/10 of their offense against BYU, that number is going to jump to 100% whenever LSU plays at Alabama. Matt Canada and Ed Ojar are going to leave no cards on, they're not going to leave any cards in the deck whenever it comes to Alabama. So everything's going to be on the table whenever they play at Tennessee. And Tennessee, I don't think is going to have a chance against LSU. And Florida, I mean, I know they have a good defense, and LSU, Danny Etling isn't that great of a quarterback, but Malik Zaire and whoever the hell else they had at Florida didn't look much better. So as an LSU fan, you've got to be feeling, you know what? That's 2 conference wins right there. we're going to beat A&M. The only questionable conference games an LSU fan should have is Alabama and Auburn. And so Auburn played like Georgia Southern. Nothing to talk about there. But that was my takeaway from the Tennessee-Georgia Tech game and the weekend as a whole. So I guess now we can start to look forward to next week. LSU plays Chattanooga. Yay, FCS teams. Much more interesting, Notre Dame hosts Georgia. So we've already talked about it a little bit. Georgia's starting quarterback out for the game, but the backup, the freshman, seems to be plenty capable. And now it's time to put the seemingly good defense to a test. See how Wimbush and company and Aquana and all of them, see how they fare against an SEC defense. Probably the SEC East favorites now, if I just just gut feeling and had to guess. So the Irish, we've got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was saying, this is gonna be the first real test for the Irish this season, and especially like such a high stakes game like this, night game under the lights at Notre Dame Stadium. It's going to be a very, very high octane environment. I know there are going to be a lot of Georgia fans here because, I mean, I think this is the first time ever that Georgia has played here in South Bend. So there are going to be a lot of Georgia fans who are going to want to come up just for this game to see, because they want to see Notre Dame. They've never been here before. So I earlier today, I was already seeing some Georgia fans walking around campus doing some sightseeing. So I know that there's going to be a lot of red in that stadium on Saturday night probably. So it's going to be a very, like I said, very high octane, high energy environment. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this team does under the pressure like that, especially Brandon Wimbush, because he really hasn't played under pressure like this before. So this is going to be the first real test for Notre Dame. And I already mentioned the test that it's gonna that Georgia offense is gonna pose for the Notre Dame defense. Even with Eason out, it's still gonna be a mighty task to undertake. And so I think that if I know that Notre Dame is actually favored in this game.
Yeah, by like half a touch, like 4 points. It started off like 6 points, but now it's like 4-ish or whatever.
Yeah. Which I was actually kind of surprised about. But I mean, so I feel like if Notre Dame wins this game, obviously, or like if they win this game, or if they lose but they keep it close, like it's like a 3-point game or something like that, I think Notre Dame might have some sort of foundation for the rest of the season to maybe start making a dark horse run at getting into a New Year's Six Bowl or something like that. So that's kind of like the barometer I'm using is that like if Notre Dame wins this game, or even if they just keep it close, I think that could be a sign that Notre Dame might have something cooking this season, which obviously we're all hoping for here in South Bend, where we've been longing for a big win like this for a long time, and so we're hoping that we finally get it on Saturday night.
Yep, absolutely, and there's going to be a lot of Georgia fans there, especially with the Bears hosting the Super Bowl choking Atlanta Falcons there at Soldier Field.
That's another good point. Yeah, a lot of Falcons fans back in today, so
yeah,
double header.
Yeah, so good sports trip for those Georgia sports fans from the state of Georgia. So that's a big game going on. Another one is Auburn goes to the wannabe Death Valley there in Clemson to take on the defending national champions. This is, from my point of view, this is going to be a very important, temperature gauge, a very important test to see how are these two teams going to be. Clemson obviously having a lot of players moving on, like Deshaun Watson after the national championship. How are they going to be this year? Are they going to smell blood in the water and make a potential run again at the playoff with Florida State seemingly out of commission, losing Francois? Is Auburn going to pose a threat in the SEC West? Or if they can, they can beat Clemson, they're going to be like, hey, we're the last Alabama team from the state of Alabama to beat Clemson. An elbow on their coworkers until in the Iron Bowl, and they get to settle it again there at the end of the season. So this game is going to be interesting because this is one where we're going to see how are these teams for real. We've heard Auburn could be potentially really good. We, of course, Clemson. We have no reason to doubt them, like as if they've gotten bad. But how good are they still? How have they developed the Deshaun Watson's replacement? I don't even know his name. How good is their team now?
Kelly Bryant.
Brian or something, whatever.
Bryant. Yeah.
Bryant. Okay. So we'll see how that game goes. Tim, you can talk more about that if you want, since you actually know some player names.
Well, first of all, it's going to be a heck of a night in college football because you're going to have 4 incredible games going on at the exact same time. You're going to have Auburn at Clemson, Georgia at Notre Dame here. Mm-hmm. You'll have Oklahoma at Ohio State. And then you'll also have Stanford at USC. 4 marquee college football games all going on at the same time. If you've got multiple TVs, you better get them working for Saturday night because it's going to be must-watch TV. Mm-hmm. Grab your buddies, grab some adult beverages, kick up your feet and enjoy because it's going to be a heck of a night. But yeah, so starting with that Auburn-Clemson game, like you said, Mikey, this is going to be a real test for both teams to see how legitimate they are. I think Clemson, they do have a decent number of weapons coming back. Obviously they lost Deshaun Watson, who was the heart and soul of that program. But Kelly Bryant had a pretty solid debut, even though it was against, a cupcake, but still put up a pretty good performance. They've got wide receivers Deion Kane and Hunter Renfrow, who caught the championship-winning touchdown last year. They're back. They've also got Christian Wilkins, the defensive lineman, back on the other side of the ball. So they do have some key returning players there at Clemson. And then at Auburn, they've got Jarrett Stidham, who transferred in from Baylor after he got hurt there, and then
Baylor, the Baylor dumpster fire got doused with kerosene.
Shit started hitting the fan there in Waco. So
yeah, that's putting it very lightly.
Yeah. So I know they're very high on Stidham at Auburn now. But again, so this is gonna be the first real test for him going into a very hostile environment. I still think that Clemson wins this game because I think they've got enough weapons returning from last year's title-winning squad, and it's at home. I think that Clemson still has enough there to win this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to the final minute.
SEC hater right there. Unbelievable, Tim. You mentioning Baylor made me forget. Baylor lost to Liberty, lol, and UNLV lost to Howard, was it? Or something like that?
Yeah.
Howard pulling off the greatest point spread upset in college football history. 45-point dogs going there to Las Vegas. And beating them. So quick shout out to that. But yeah,
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Am I right? I
wonder who won or lost money on that game. So we
wonder how many people even bet on that game.
Yeah, I wonder if that was on anyone's books. Probably. But yeah. So Auburn Clemson definitely is going to be a close game. I think. I don't know what's going to happen. I do think it will be a close game regardless. I don't remember how much of an underdog Auburn was, but I thought it was way too much. So I definitely think Auburn might win a moral victory by covering the spread there. But whether or not the Tigers can beat the Tigers, whichever way you want to think of that, has yet to be seen.
The Tigers will win this game. I can guarantee you that.
Put your money on the Tigers, boys and girls. Vegas will not know what to do.
Their heads will be spinning.
Yeah.
All night long.
Yeah. Well,
but they already do that in Vegas anyway. So what am I talking about?
Yeah. So that's that game. Other game. Moving up north to Columbus, Ohio, where Ohio State faces Oklahoma. Some very big. Similar game. Ohio State did not give us many reasons to be confident with them in their game against Indiana. And Oklahoma, with Bob Stoops' retirement, still has Baker Mayfield, still has a very talented team, as Oklahoma does year in and year out. That's going to be another big question mark for us. Is Oklahoma maybe a dark horse as Big 12 favorites? Not exactly a dark horse, but could Oklahoma sneak into the playoff? At the very least, take the Big 12's New Year's Six bid. Is Ohio State, is it too early to start pressing the panic button, or are they going to have to climb out of a hole against Penn State, Michigan, and maybe even Wisconsin for a Big Ten title and the Big Ten possible spot there in the playoffs? So I truly don't know what to expect in this game. Like I think Ohio State's going to win because they're the home team, but that's the only rationale I have behind it. There's just so many unknowns going into this game from my perspective.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I wouldn't push the panic button on Ohio State yet. I mean, one game is certainly not indicative of a whole product, But I mean, let's remember that Ohio State, they went into Norman last year and beat Oklahoma by two touchdowns or something like that. So and that was kind of like one of the big statements that they had on their playoff resume last year. So do they complete the home and home sweep here, or does Oklahoma do the same thing last year? I mean, like you said, Oklahoma's still a very talented team with Baker Mayfield back in tow. So I mean, I don't know. This is kind of a toss-up to me, like what you were saying, Mike. I mean, like I would want to say that Ohio State wins because they're the home team, but I mean, outside of that, I mean, I feel like this game is kind of a toss-up, but I really feel like whoever wins this game definitely has a big statement win to put on their playoff resume, even though it's only week 2. I mean, it was a big thing for Ohio State last year to beat Oklahoma. I mean, it could be the same thing again for either team this year. So, and that would look really good to committee members if Oklahoma is able to go into the horseshoe, get this win, and then let's remember that also the Big 12 championship game is back this year. So if Oklahoma goes on to win that, and they also have a win against Ohio State in Columbus in their back pocket, I think that's going to be very, very sexy to the selection committee. That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Oklahoma, if they can get out of the state of Ohio with a W, would definitely have a compelling argument pending on the rest of their season as to a chance to go back to the college football playoff and maybe beat someone this time. We'll see how this eases the transition away from Bob Stoops. But yeah, this is probably the most. All the big games have a lot of question marks up in the air, but this will definitely be an interesting one to keep track of. And now the fourth big matchup taking place simultaneously that we have mentioned is Stanford USC. Now, as much as Sam Darnold is like the overhyped Heisman favorite, and even though USC struggled a little bit against Western Michigan. It was obvious that USC was looking ahead to Stanford. And keep in mind, this is a Western Michigan game, Western Michigan team that was coached by PJ Fleck and made it to the Cotton Bowl last year. So they're not scared of anyone. I don't think they felt pressure going down to the Coliseum. However, USC ended up pulling out the win anyway. And maybe if they spent, we'll see how they do it against Stanford. Keep in mind, Stanford has won against USC the past couple of years, whether favored or not. And an interesting stat that I saw was USC has not beat Stanford by more than a touchdown since 2008. So
that's pretty eye-opening.
I mean, that's, Stanford's just a matchup nightmare. The brand of football they play, the almost SEC-esque physicality of the Cardinal that Stanford brings to the playing field. It's going to be another matchup nightmare for USC. I would not be surprised. I mean, Stanford is a touchdown underdog here. I think the odds are, and I mean, with that 2008 stat, if you're going into your sport book or to your bookie being like, this is easy money in the bank right here, if history is anything to go by. And I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if Stanford wins outright. I think the Cardinal, if I had to pick, I think Stanford is going to win this game. I mean, it's like whenever you play Alabama, unless you're proven wrong, there's no reason to change what you think. Unless I can see USC finally be able to handle the Stanford's physical brand of football there out west, I don't have any faith in the USC Trojans to beat Stanford.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. That ground and pound style of football that Stanford loves to play definitely does not mesh well with USC, because they're much more of a Southern California flavor. They want everything to be flashy and sexy and all this stuff. So it definitely what Stanford likes to do definitely runs counter to what USC wants to do. And as we've seen the last few years, it's given USC nightmares in this matchup. So, I mean, and Stanford looked really good in their opener in Australia a couple weeks ago. Now, I know it was against Rice, but, I mean, they still put up 62 points.
Looking good is still looking good. I mean... Yeah. That being the national champions of the country of Australia, the Stanford Cardinal definitely are not afraid of big games.
No, and the big question coming in Cardinal was how are they going to replace Christian McCaffrey and what he did for them on offense. I mean, well, first of all, you can't really replace a Christian McCaffrey.
No,
I mean he's just kind of one of those one-of-a-kind players that's almost like irreplaceable. But what I saw from their two backs in that game against Rice really impressed me, and I think both of them were over 100 yards rushing by halftime, if not early in the third quarter. So I mean, now, granted, it was against Rice, but I mean, they definitely put on a show, much more than I thought they were gonna do. So I mean, I would not be surprised if Stanford goes into this game, goes into the Coliseum and pulls out the win. And also think about it, Stanford's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They didn't play last weekend after the game in Australia, so they've had some extra prep time. USC might be a little shaken after that close call against Western Michigan, and Sam Darnold did not play well in that game. So I think I would agree with you. I think that Stanford has an excellent chance of going into LA and pulling off the win. And that's going to start to get rumors swirling about how good is this USC team really? Maybe they're not a shoe-in to win the conference. If Stanford beats them, obviously we know what they're capable of doing. And then Washington, who went to the playoff and won the conference last year, is still hanging around too. So I mean, I think I agree. I think Stanford can pull this win off, and if they do, I think we're going to start to see some more questions surrounding this USC team and whether they're as hyped up as we thought they were.
I mean, we've seen it plenty of times in the past couple of years where USC has hyped up very, very much so and just failed to deliver with, I mean, how many coaches have they gone through in our, like, Ed Ogeron's interim coach, Lane Kiffin, Sarkisian. I mean, it's a disaster there in LA. And going off what you said, I mean, especially if they lose this game, I mean, regardless, the Pac-12 is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight to the end. Especially the Pac-12 North looks stacked right now because of Stanford, Washington, and Washington State all being ranked right now, as you can see in our little bottom bar. Washington,
Oregon could be a dark horse too.
I mean, the Ducks have been good in the past. They're still trying to find their identity after their breakup with Chip Kelly and Marcus Mariota being the last remnants of that era. So, I mean, the Pac-12 North is by all means going to be just, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Colorado's not too shabby either. And then in the South, you never know what the Arizona teams are going to do, what Utah can do. I mean, and UCLA. It's going to be the Pac-12 is going to be an interesting conference race for sure. More interesting than I think people will give it credit for. That's what you get for being a West Coast team and playing way too late at night for the average viewer. But I mean, it's definitely something to keep your eye on. So that's all I have to say about that.
I think we covered those games pretty well.
Yep, definitely agree with that. So let's kind of bring this train into the station. I'm sure let's go into the amazing segment of what games will you be at this week. Tim, we all know the answer, but just go ahead and tell us.
Notre Dame, Georgia, Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern time.
So
very excited for it. It's gonna be one of the hopefully it's one of the better games that we see this season, and hopefully we learn a lot more about the Irish for this game, and hopefully that's we learn a lot of good things about that.
Yep. So definitely be sure that you're following Tim on all of his appropriate social medias for any game day thoughts the general has about the Fighting Irish. Me, I am going to the best game of all this week, LSU Chattanooga. So
what a marquee matchup that is.
I mean, I on the ESPN app there wasn't even a Vegas line for the game. That's how just non-consequential it's gonna be. I don't think that they'll allow bets that high. So I'll be there in Death Valley. Luckily though, I think my tickets are in a suite, so I'll have access to a television where I can watch much more intriguing games while looking out the window and being like, oh look, Darius Guy scored again. Woohoo! So if you're in and around Baton Rouge, same thing with me goes for me. Be sure to add me on Snapchat and follow me on Twitter. I'll be sending out my thoughts about what's going on there in Death Valley, as well as if you want to invite me to your tailgate, by all means, or come to the tailgate we have. I'm sure the same thing goes for Tim up there in South Bend. So that's where we'll be. We'll be watching the games. Follow us on our appropriate social medias for our thoughts or whatever. And if you want to ask us questions, by all means, tweet at us. We will try and address your questions. Tweet us, leave a comment on the video, and all that. So be sure to, share this video with your friends to tell them that ESPN's dying. Come look at these two knuckleheads on YouTube. If SportsCenter is getting too unbearable for you, and you can't stay up to watch SVP, then we're here all the time. That's the magic of YouTube. You can watch us whenever you want after we're uploaded. So be sure to leave a like on the video, let us know what you're doing, and subscribe to the video, enable notifications so you will know when you can finally get your dose of crack that is Sports Ramblings. So
it truly is crack cocaine, I'm telling you.
I mean, a lot of ramblings, a little bit of sports. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We could talk about more stuff, but everyone knows college football is king. The NFL is starting up. Bears host the Falcons. Saints have the Monday night first Monday night slot against the Vikings. And there's a couple. Every matchup in the NFL is basically a good matchup. Titans Raiders comes to mind. Chiefs Patriots. Sure, NFL, go team.
Giants Cowboys.
Giants Cowboys too.
Sunday night,
especially with Ezekiel Elliott deal. I think he doesn't have to sit out this first game though.
No, I think Zeke is gonna play, but his suspension start in week 2.
Yeah, I think his suspension, unless he wants to voluntarily take it, which since he's appealing to the NFL, I don't think he wants to serve any kind of suspension.
I think he's playing Sunday night.
So
rivalry game, I think he's playing.
We'll see what happens in the NFL. We're much more interested in college football. Let us know what you think. Thanks for watching the video. This is Mikey and General Zenotic signing out. Later, y'all.
Peace.